You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Reaching all the way back to 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition. Here is your host of Fate Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I'm so glad you're here. We have a fantastic show for you tonight. I'm excited. I first heard this guest about 3 or 4 years ago when my friend Frank Lee was interviewing him. And when I first heard him, I thought, oh, please, there's no way. This cannot possibly be something that's a reality. And you know what? I'm thinking it's a possibility, right? This is going to be so much fun. Stephen Myers has written extensively about the fact that he believes the Great Pyramid of Giza, and I'm assuming others similar to it that are around the world, were built as water pumps. And I'm going to tell you that I have spoken and heard someone else that I hold in great esteem as well discuss the possibility. It just never ceases to amaze me. And Stephen, I am so happy to welcome you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your patience in getting here. And hooray, here we are.
Here we are. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Well, I do too. And definitely worth the wait. So thank you for that.
It is. Oh, it is.
You know, I did first hear you several years ago, and I had not yet read the books, right? So when I did, it was just astounding to me. I had never even contemplated this as a possibility. Where did you come up with your theory?
Well, I have always been interested in technology. My background is a technical background. Several, degree, certificates, that type of thing. I enjoy technology. I'm a ham radio operator and also commercial class FCC radio telephone license. So I've always enjoyed technology and I like history. So if you like technology and history, ultimately you'll take a look at the Great Pyramid because it's a technological wonder that was built in distant history. So just like everybody, I got interested in pyramids in general and specifically the Great Pyramid. And I kind of wanted to know two things about it. I didn't want to know when it was built. I didn't want to know who built it. I didn't want to know the religion of the people that built it or anything like that, or even the culture. I wanted to know how this 45-story skyscraper was built and why would they do such a thing. So I got interested and read all these books and everything, and ultimately come up with this theory that is actually based on another author's theory. The foundation of what I'm doing is based on his theory. Edward Kunkel wrote a book called Pharaoh's Pump. Back in the first edition was 1962. So, we built on his research and ultimately started a nonprofit foundation, and we're dedicated to understanding how and why the Great Pyramid was built.
Well, the nonprofit is called the Pharaoh's Pump Foundation. And the website
in honor
again
of Edward Kunkel.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's the title of his book, Pharaoh's Pump. So to give him credit and honor, we named it after his book, in effect.
Well, your whole purpose is actually to research and develop the technologies that you believe were used to build and operate the Great Pyramid the way the originals intended it, right?
That's true. That's what we're doing. We think that the Great Pyramid is evidence that exhibits the idea that ancient people were geniuses, and there's some high technologies associated with the Great Pyramid, precision stone cutting, and several other high technologies. And we think that the Great Pyramid was built to be infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
and a working machine that would benefit the people that built it. You know, they didn't build it so they could tell us they knew pi. And I don't, you know, I don't think that they built it so something could point to something else or have anything to do with stars or religion or whatever.
Right,
I
because
think
you're
that it
just
was a
completely
functional.
against the whole Orion theory.
Well, I've researched it, yes, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that they built the Great Pyramid to help people in a tangible way.
Yes.
And we think that the Great Pyramid is a unique and efficient water pumping system that would really help modern mankind. And that's what we're doing is we are doing the best we can to redevelop that ancient technology.
Well, I know that a lot of the graphics in your book fascinate me because I live in the land of locks and dams. Okay. I live
Yes,
in
you do.
Alabama and we have a complete lock system from one end of the state to the other.
Yes,
Realistically, you should
yes,
be able to kayak your way from the Tennessee line into the Gulf of Mexico. So
yes.
I'm not unfamiliar with your theories relevant to how they actually were stepping up. What I was really fascinated by, however, was the fact that they had to take such massive pieces of stone so high. And that was overwhelming to me to contemplate because it would be so difficult in theory.
It is, well, it is difficult if you're an Egyptologist. The entire science of Egyptology has never moved a payload the weight of the one of the heaviest stones of the Great Pyramid, which is 70 tons. They've never moved a payload 1 inch. So yes, it can be very hard. But in the real world, which I think the Great Pyramid was built in the real world, real people needed to achieve the engineering feat of moving heavy stones. And I think that they used water locks similar to those in your area. When the Erie Canal was built, it was 4.5 feet deep, and the barges were able to carry, believe it or not, a capacity of 70 tons. So one end of the Erie Canal is compared to the other end is higher than the height of the Great Pyramid. So back in the 1830s, regular people were able to move 70-ton payloads higher than the height of the Great Pyramid. And I think a similar technology was used to build the Great Pyramid because it's fast, controllable, powerful, and in fact, water locks are the system of choice to use in the 21st century to move our heaviest objects, which are aircraft carriers, tankers, and everything else. The Panama Canal has
Mm-hmm.
been updated by adding larger water locks because it's the 21st century system of choice. They didn't use a magic wand or contemplate their navel or hum or anything like that. Those were engineers that really needed to do stuff, so they built additional water locks in the Panama Canal. So yes, it's difficult to do unless you do it the easy way.
Well, one thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I am not an engineering person other than what I have researched and educated myself on, and that's not generally the best way to go about learning these things. However, you mentioned the Erie Canal and the Panama Canal, both of which have great length, plenty of room, to step up to that level. As each system was stepping up, and I do understand that, you get to the end, to the final lock, and you just allow more water. But they would have to go about doing this in quite a structured environment, right?
Certainly, everything about the Great Pyramid, none of it is to chance, if you will. None of it's a coincidence or anything else. It was created, by design, and every aspect of the Great Pyramid has a purpose. And so, yes, we think that the water locks at the Great Pyramid construction site were incorporated into the casing stones, which are cemented together watertight. The casing stones that still are at the Great Pyramid are cemented together watertight. So, excuse me. So anyway, there's a series of water locks that go up the casing stones. We have a free video series on our website
Yes.
at thepump.org, which depicts that fascinating and very visual process in great detail. I don't know if you've watched all of that, but
I've watched the vast majority.
Awesome. I appreciate that. So the water locks would go up a flight of water locks up the side of the Great Pyramid to build the Great Pyramid level by level, including the casing stones. So we think it was built level by level. So, and you don't need to be an engineer, because a lot of this makes, if I can say this, common sense. People that watch the video series or read my books, my feedback is a lot of people say that it's compelling, and
it is compelling.
Actually, I appreciate that, and that it makes sense. So, the interest has been very high. But they can watch the video series to see how all the stones, including the capstone, if there was one, was set in place. And it's quite a lot of computer generated animations for people to see the whole process.
Two things that I learned over this past summer were one from an Egyptologist, one from Eric von Daniken. From Eric von Daniken, who's rather the original Indiana Jones, and was allowed access through the pyramids before they were shut down, right? Before they realized that was not a good thing. And I believe he would still be granted that access based on his history of research there and his fascination. But he said that in the bottom of the pyramid, there's a clear pool, and that clear pool is constant and fresh and blue, and that doesn't change. So that means that there is water flowing in there. So there's no reason to doubt that would not be able to have locks dredged, have diversions for the water dredged to come to the pyramid, because we don't know what the structure of the landscape was back then. Things change, and especially I would think with shifting sands. But the second thing was through an Egyptologist who is on television, and he said that a document, a papyrus, had been found that indicated that the pyramids were actually built in half the time that was generally considered fact. They found a papyrus that a foreman had created, like a journal page, and it was 20-something years that it took to build it. And if you look at all of the different ways to do that, I feel that being able to mobilize the stones in the manner you suggest is the only way that that goal could have been reached.
Well, I appreciate your kind words, and it means a lot to me. Yes, I think the original builders were able to provide a water source that was available at the Great Pyramid. There's other researchers, including Christopher Dunn, that contends water was made available at the Giza Plateau. There's scholarly debate, either underground or by surface, and that he even contends that water entered the descending passage that went down towards the subterranean chamber. So, excuse me, we think that the subterranean chamber underneath the Great Pyramid was like a water pump in itself, like a hydraulic ram water pump, only quite a bit different. And that water pump is what supplied the water for the water locks up to build the Great Pyramid to such great height. And those water locks were supplied with water from that subterranean water pump.
Well, I just think that I heard an awful lot of people speak over the last couple of years that I've been researching this and, doing my show and going to listen to lectures. And there's nothing, the majority of people believe in the dredging theory, that they looped the Nile around into the area where the pyramid is. I don't know, where do you suppose that the pump to get water into the base of the pyramid, such as the pool maybe that Eric was talking about, was placed?
That's a possibility, but there's scholarly debate as to how water was made available to the Giza Plateau. Certainly, there's a profound link between the Great Pyramid and water. Herodotus described the Great Pyramid as being like an island surrounded by water. There used to be an enclosure wall around the Great Pyramid. When Napoleon was there, his savants, if you will, drew early pictures that depict that wall. That was the 1700s, 18th century area. But that wall is now gone. But we think that enclosure wall helped impound water for the construction process. And then Sir Flanders Petrie, an early Egyptologist, he found Nile earth inside the Great Pyramid, which is sediment. And there's a host of other pieces of evidence that indicates water was associated with the Great Pyramid. But some say the ancient Lake Maurice supplied water to the Great Pyramid. Other people contend that water was from a subterranean source. So, the Sphinx is eroded with water, and there's other water-related features on the Giza Plateau.
That just amazes me. So few people even have this conversation, much less get as involved in the research and development that you're doing, trying to recreate these technologies.
Yes.
What is your motivation for that?
Well, actually, a humanitarian. We're not going to get a patent. We don't want to try to get a patent and charge people, but we want to develop a water pumping system that will be an alternative to using hydroelectric power to pump water, or using nuclear generated electricity, or using fossil fuels. It's mainly humanitarian. It's not a get rich quick scheme. And we want to develop plans that people can make themselves, if you will, in cottage industries around the world, even in third world countries. So we think that the passages and chambers of the Great Pyramid were a unique ancient high technology that was both energy efficient and also environmentally friendly. And we want to develop that technology now for our modern but troubled world. So we use a lot of ancient technologies. Aspirin is an ancient technology from South America. Down there, the witch doctor would say, chew these leaves and call me in the morning. But the leaves contained what we have synthesized as aspirin. So there's a lot of medical ancient technologies in Egypt. They did birth control, they did C-sections. So all these are ancient technologies that we're actually familiar with. But this Great Pyramid was infrastructure that helped the people that built it, had a huge return on investment, and we think that technology would have a value in today's world where we have centralized energy production, but we want to decentralize the production of energy.
Interesting. When you talk about the prosperity, when we come back from this break, I would like to discuss the rise of some of the kingdoms there and how this may be relevant to that. But that being said, we will be back in 3 minutes. Y'all come right back.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate Magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Son of a...
Hey, son.
Mother...
Son? What are you doing?
Hey, Mom. I'm getting ready to listen to Periscope Uncensored.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Son, the uncensored part of Periscope Uncensored is Jax and I getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. There's no fluff on our show.
So, no off-color commentary?
I didn't say that.
Awesome!
Son?
I just hit my head.
Oh boy. I'll go get you an ice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Hello there. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I'm Kat Hobson, your host, with my guest Stephen Myers, and we were discussing the prosperity side of the Great Pyramid water pump, and not just prosperity for individuals, but prosperity for society as a whole. Right, Stephen?
Oh, that is correct. That's what we think the Great Pyramid was infrastructure. Just like in the United States, we build huge hydroelectric dams. And even though they have passages that point to stars, hydroelectric dams do, That was not their intent. Their intent was to actually have a return on investment for the cost of building them, and they have a huge return on investment. The same with the highway system. They did. We built them not because the roads are in alignment with something, but we did it because there's a huge return on investment for our civilization. That's where our wealth comes from. Our power grids and all of that. So that's why people in the first world, especially the United States, are inundated by prosperity. We just are just so used to it. But and in ancient Egypt, there were geniuses at one time who convinced their leader, whoever that was, to fund the construction of the Great Pyramid. And the return on investment was that the pumped water was used certainly for irrigation, power heavy machinery, create compressed air, believe it or not, which you can use for a lot of industrial purposes or a whole host of processes. And I see the Giza Plateau more as a science center or industrial park originally than a graveyard.
Well, especially considering that there were only supposed to be 3 chambers, and there now they've found a 4th, so they don't really know. That 4th chamber, that 4th void, kind of violates every theory that's been espoused thus far relevant to the graveyard aspect of it. Also, when I was sharing our video yesterday in our show, I had kind of tongue-in-cheek thanked Ancient Aliens for promoting our show, because Giorgio and Rami, who had mentioned the papyrus that he had from the foreman of the pyramid builders, were in the pyramid looking for this void, trying to find out what was going on. And Giorgio even noted that while most of the pyramids had hieroglyphics through them, the walkway they were going through did not. And that the Great Pyramid really lacks the hieroglyphics that the others have. And
yes, that's correct.
I found that to be an interesting thing, given that I knew I was going to be talking to you tonight. And I would have liked to have been able to pick up the phone and say, "Yo, Giorgio, why don't you dial in, dude?" Because I thought that would have just been such a fantastic conversation, because he's always so interested in everything. And I know he has to have read your books. I know that he is very well aware of everything, because he just loves everything. He loves to learn. And,
cool.
But he was pointing out differences that you're aware of as well, that makes one wonder what exactly was the purpose of this structure.
Right. If you see pictures of temples and where King Tut was buried and all of the valley of the where all the tombs are,
the Valley of the Kings.
Yes, Valley of the Kings. They're all covered with hieroglyphics and writing and pictographs and all of that, all over everything, all the temples, the columns. But the Great Pyramid has no formal writing inside of it at all. So I find that interesting too. So either they were built by different civilizations, or they had very different purposes. It's interesting that a car engine, inside the cylinders, they don't have any writing in there, because it's a machine. You don't need any writing inside there.
You don't intend someone to be there. Yes.
Yeah, you don't need any writing inside of it. So it's not a tomb, certainly, and there is some contention that there is a 4th void above the Grand Gallery, if you will. We've all seen the pictures on the internet and Facebook. And that void was supposedly discovered by a scan, but some of the scans of the Great Pyramid have produced contradictory results. The scan
Yes.
before that scan detected the internal spiral ramp, if you will. We've all heard of that. But then the scan after that didn't detect the internal spiral ramp, but did detect this void that the other scan didn't. So scans can produce some contradictory evidence, and hopefully we can get more information and more understanding of these various voids that have been detected by scans.
Well, I am not familiar with all of the ones that went before, but were they all indicative? I mean, this void has shocked Egyptologists around the globe.
Yes.
But were other voids cited in other scans?
Yes, the earlier while back there was another scan that supposedly detected an internal spiral ramp, but the most recent scan didn't detect that internal spiral ramp. So
It wasn't
again,
there?
no, the scan didn't detect it. So
Wow.
that's the evidence, but the interpretation of the evidence is a different thing. So what I'm saying is these scans produce scant evidence, or evidence that is up to scholarly debate or interpretation. So we need to find out more information. I'm always in favor of more research, more understanding, that type of thing.
Well, because it's just so much fun.
Oh, it is
so
fun.
much fun to learn things that just completely were unheard of, right? I think
It
that
is fun.
is one of the best things is when you get new information and everyone is like, and then it's the talk of the globe.
It is. But the builders of the Great Pyramid were geniuses. They weren't knuckle draggers.
No, they were not.
And they didn't care about us at all. So they didn't build anything to tell us something. What they wanted was their children to eat every day. Just like that's why they built the Grand Coulee Dam or the Hoover Dam.
Yes.
People wanted to be able to see at night. So they built this great infrastructure, and it turned poverty into prosperity, and it turned the desert into a garden. And that's what the Great Pyramid was all about. It was a life machine, and it had nothing to do with death.
People are always so surprised that something like that would be possible in a desert area. But, you had the Tigris River, which was so powerful in transforming Iraq when they were able to channel that water and create those gardens back in the day. And it was a paradise.
You are correct. The largest structure in North America is the Grand Coulee Dam, and it is built on the Columbia River in eastern Washington. And that dam, biggest structure in the world, it makes electricity, but it's also a self-powered water pump. It uses that electricity to run big pumps that are inside the dam up to this higher reservoir, and then it irrigates 1.5 million acres. So it's pretty amazing, and its operating cost is for the year is paid for after it runs only for 2 weeks. The rest of the time is like pure profit, if you will, return on investment. So these infrastructure projects, if done right, can be a huge return on investment.
That's astounding. If that is the case, then why do people, if we actually have created a structure that will do this, why does the concept of the Great Pyramid, having been that when there was water readily available, why does that seem so unaccepted? Why are people so shocked by that? They know it's possible. We've done it.
Well, they are shocked by it, especially if they're over 30 years old. Because if you're over 30 years old, you're already invested in an idea. And usually that idea is either about tombs or about alignments or whatever. So people don't change their minds. The Piltdown skull was discovered and it had file marks on it. Okay. It was a fraud. But the people that the leading anthropologists, the experts, said, "Oh, there it is, the missing link." Okay, it's right there, even though it has file marks on it. You can go see the file marks today. Well, none of the experts changed their mind for 40 years, and then they all died off. Then a new generation of anthropologists said, "Well, nah, that's a fake." So the point is, nobody changed their mind. And that's what happens with the Great Pyramid. Egyptologists have an invested story, even though they can't demonstrate anything,
Right.
stone cutting or moving stones. So it just takes kind of a generational change for ideas to take hold.
Well, I think that's tragic because you hate to think of somebody being so close minded that they're not open to possibilities. And, I am curious as to what you feel led to this not functioning anymore.
Okay, yeah, the Great Pyramid is not pumping water anymore. That is correct. I think that, excuse me, I think what happened was it broke, specifically in the King's Chamber. There is an expansive force happened in the King's Chamber. The stones of that chamber have been spread apart, if you will. And we think that the coffer in that chamber was used as a water level device. And it's quite technical, but it's all described in my book.
Mm-hmm.
And that water level control device broke. And that caused the King's Chamber to become completely filled with water. And then when additional water came in, it caused an expansive force. All other researchers acknowledge that there was some sort of force inside the Great Pyramid, and you can word search explosive force in the King's Chamber, but we think it was like a hydraulic force.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Dunn and other people contend that there was some type of a force that caused this expansion of the King's Chamber. So and then it broke the ceiling stones, and then that chamber caused the Great Pyramid to be unrepairable.
Well, that's tragic. Is that something that, with the technology, I feel that with the technology that we utilize as a rule today, that we would not be able to rebuild that structure without a whole lot of people making a whole lot of money trying to come up with different ideas. But rather than just dredging out a path and going for it. But could that be repaired with the technology that we have today?
No, it wouldn't be worth repairing the Great Pyramid because the Great Pyramid serves a different purpose. The purpose it serves now is a tourist attraction. It's a money generating machine now instead of a water pump. So being an ancient artifact, it would be inappropriate to alter it, if you will, or to go in and try to repair it. But a lot of people say the Great Pyramid, we can't duplicate it with the technology we have today. I would disagree with that. We have cranes that can lift many, many tons of stone. We have modern stone cutting equipment that can cut stone with great precision. So if you use modern stone cutting and modern stone moving, if you will, methods, you could recreate the Great Pyramid. In other words, pile a bunch of rocks on top of each other. So, but what we're thinking about is using much smaller technology like PVC pipe, polypropylene, containers, some custom valves, and that type of thing. And that's what we're doing in our facility. We have a fundraising effort to acquire a 3D printer, and we're about halfway there. So if somebody wants to get involved with our crowdfunding effort, they can go to our website at thepump.org and see what it's all about and see if they want to be involved.
Well, it's a great site, by the way, because the information is there. The book links are there. You can find Steve's books on Amazon.com also. And it's pretty fascinating. Absolutely. But
thank you for that.
Well, it's true. And had I not read, I wouldn't have understood. And some of it I still don't understand. I do a lot of Googling when I read technical things. And especially when I start delving into physics and such, I'm into Googling terminology. So it's okay.
Boy, I'm the same way, and
well,
that's,
you don't
that's
learn
how
if you
it's done.
don't. Yeah, you got to learn. Can't walk around.
That's better than picking out an expert and saying, I believe what he tells me.
Yeah,
so
right.
I consider you a real researcher by doing what you've described. But can you imagine ancient people building this great big structure because it would actually help them in a positive way? Isn't that a wonderful thing to consider?
It is a wonderful thing to consider. And, the tragedy is that, to my knowledge, the only location of these pyramids in Africa are in northern Africa and
Yes.
the Arabian Peninsula. And in South Africa, we have people from America going to dig wells so that separate little towns can at least have a source of clean water. And,
Correct.
It just is so, it would be great to have this technology spread throughout areas that desperately need it.
You're correct. Also, this efficient water pumping technology could be used to take water from where there's too much water and pump it away. So like in the Midwest, in Nebraska, where they're having flooding and that type of thing, you could possibly, have infrastructure to remove some of the water. So there's a lot of advantages to being able to move water cheaply and efficiently. So it also would make marginal farmland more productive. So we're hoping to develop this ancient technology. Funding has been a struggle because it's such a, it's so revolutionary, if you will.
It is. It is. That being said, when we come back, we have a question for you in chat, but it's time for our second break, and we will be gone for about 2 minutes, and y'all come back. This just keeps getting better and better with my guest, Stephen Myers.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am Kat Hobson, your host, with my guest Stephen Myers. And Stephen, I was going to let you know that we did have a comment in the chat room, and that was someone who said, well, you're over 30. And yet you're still here doing this research.
Yeah, I'm over 30, but I started this research well over 25 years ago. I mean, back in the 1980s. I've been doing this for a long time. So, but yeah, if I can think the Great Pyramid is a water pump, I consider myself to have an open mind, that's for sure. So, but I also like to use valid research techniques in studying anything, even ancient architecture. So, so that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Well, you know, the forbidden geometry and all this other kind of stuff. What do you make of that?
Well, there's a lot of terms out there, sacred geometry, and a bunch of other stuff. All of us have seen on the internet and Facebook people that have like a cross section of the Great Pyramid, and then they draw a whole bunch of lines on it, and I mean, so many lines and almost colors in the whole image.
Yes.
And circles and stuff, and but it's hard to, it's hard to justify that was intended by the original builders. In other words, a lot of those are correlations, between something that points to something or a line, but there's no causation. And so I'm not into sacred geometry at all. Sacred geometry didn't move stones. Pi didn't move stones
no.
to build the Great Pyramid. Something pointing to a star didn't move stones to build the Great Pyramid.
What do you think about aliens?
Aliens? Well, they're building a wall. You've heard about that.
Yeah, but the theory that there were interstellar travelers who came and aided with all this infrastructure.
There is that theory. Some idea that they came across the galaxy and then had to pile rocks on top of each other so they could find their way home or whatever. Actually, the focus of my research is quite narrow, if you will. In other words, a specialist. And that question about aliens is about who was involved with the technology. So I don't do who. I don't do pharaohs. I don't do kings. I don't do any of that. All I do is how the Great Pyramid was assembled and why they did it. So possibly because the Great Pyramid was from distant antiquity, many people think that, well, people back then couldn't be smart enough to pile rocks on top of each other, so there must have been some alien influence. And that's a possibility. But also another possibility is in distant antiquity, there might have been a genius like a Nikola Tesla. And he figured out alternating current in one day. Or there might have been a guy named Victor Schauberger, who is attributed to a whole bunch of unusual machines. He even worked for Adolf Hitler for a while. Victor Schauberger, people I'm sure know about him.
They do.
So there could have been a couple of geniuses, a leader that had an organized society, and then they assembled the Great Pyramid. So I'm not sure. I'm open to the idea of aliens, but I don't know.
Well, we have another question in chat, and this was like, if the water came from the Nile regularly overflows its banks, but that means there's powerful bacteria. And what do you think they would have done about that?
Certainly, there's powerful bacteria in the Nile River now. So with Egypt being largest population of any country in Africa. Certainly 40 centuries ago, things would have probably been different. There's not only bacteria, but industrial waste in the Nile River. When I was there, they said, don't go fishing in the Nile River. You'll catch a fish with 5 eyeballs. So,
Kind of like the Pacific.
yeah,
Which is not funny, but sadly true.
that's true. So, yeah. But back then, I don't think it's the same as it was now in terms of bacteria, if you will. Certainly, there's a lot of sediment in the Nile River. And of course, for irrigation, that would just add, it would be a natural fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
How interesting it is that the largest structure in the Valley of the Nile right now is a water pump. And it's pumping water right now. It's working.
Really?
Yes, that's the High Aswan Dam, probably 15 times as big as the Great Pyramid by volume. And it uses electricity for a whole host of purposes, including powering irrigation pumps. So the largest structure in Africa and in the Valley of the Nile is used to pump water.
I do find that interesting.
It is interesting. So modern people, they're smart enough to know, well, if we build this big infrastructure, we can irrigate year round instead of through the yearly inundation, which isn't enough. So they built this High Aswan Dam, for prosperity, and it worked well.
That is fascinating, because if we're smart enough cookies to do that now, why couldn't they be smart enough cookies back then?
Excuse me. Yes. So in ancient times, in the Valley of the Nile, they built a huge structure as infrastructure to pump water. In modern times, in the Valley of the Nile, they built a huge structure that is used to pump water. They operate differently, certainly, but it's very interesting to look at it that way.
It is.
Mm-hmm. The High Aswan Dam has passages that point to stars, but everything that points up points to stars. So,
Well, I am one of those people who find fascination in the fact that those pyramids are aligned with all of 3 stars of Orion's belt. I also find the ley lines and energy grids part of my fascination as well. But that doesn't eliminate the possibility that this is simply a mechanical structure. They could have been thankful to the heavens for having been given the skills to be able to build that.
Certainly, there's a lot of possibilities.
Certainly.
Yes.
One does not preclude the other.
Not necessarily, but the Great Pyramid could have been built thousands of years before the other 2 large pyramids, and they could have, and then whoever built the other 2 pyramids could have thought that they looked like, the Milky Way, or maybe looked like a puppy dog or whatever. They wanted to look like a cloud that looked like something else. But there has been another theory about the Great Pyramid called pyramidology, and that was very popular about 70 years ago, where people compared the Great Pyramid with the Bible. There's a lot of data points in the Great Pyramid. It's a complex structure, and the same with the Bible. And then they made comparisons and came up with a bunch of correlations. But in terms of research techniques, those correlations didn't have they weren't validated by having a causation. So they were just comparing oftentimes unrelated data points. So there's a question about the research techniques involved with the Orion correlation theory, if I can be bold to say that. I know it's a popular narrative right now, almost as popular as the biblical correlation theory was 70 years ago.
I'm loving this. And Brenda in chat says, well, has it been carbon dated? The
It has.
the other pyramids.
Well, the Great Pyramid has several times, and the results have been inconclusive to my notion. They have different results. You can't carbon date rock, but the mortar or the bonding agent between the stones has some organic material, and that has been carbon dated. But they don't know if the samples have been contaminated. They don't know if the samples were from repairs well after the building was originally built. So there's a lot of controversy about carbon dating, but certainly when the Great Pyramid was built is not the focus of my research, but probably it was built pre-catastrophe, either pre-flood or pre-ice age or whatever, because it doesn't appear that the civilization that we know of as ancient Egypt has the technology to cut stones that we know of to the precision that the stones were cut. So it's hard to say.
Too cool stuff. It blows me away that there are so many questions, and yet, as in this case, there's already answers, and people don't even realize this work has been going on. I mean,
yeah. My research, you mean?
Yes.
Or what? Yeah.
Well, and it's before
it's
you.
Hard to get the word out.
It's even before you took up this mantle to carry it forward. This is not a new theory. And
it's not a new theory.
And someone actually doing the science to get the specs to get an idea of what to do is probably newer. You know, somebody being fired up about getting out there and getting this done is probably new. But the concept itself is not. And
it is not.
About how far back does this theory go?
Okay, a fellow named Edward Kunkel, who I never met, he died in about 1980. He was just a regular guy. He didn't really have a degree, but he was a businessman and did a whole bunch of other things. But he was kind of like me in that always on the back burner, always in his mind was the Great Pyramid, how it was assembled. And he studied it since the 1930s, this idea, and he would give lectures and everything. This is even before the internet. And ultimately, in 1962, he published his book called Pharaoh's Pump. That was the first edition in 1962. So it was privately published. He couldn't get it published by a publisher, of course. And he, never could get funding for experimentation. So he did some experimentation, but everything was hampered by lack of resources. And, he died a penniless man. So it's too bad. He also wrote One Bright Day, which is his autobiography. Interesting story. It, too, was privately published, but with limited distribution. So I would recommend both of those books. And but he died in certainly in obscurity. A few other researchers mentioned him in passing, and I got a whole, had to interlibrary loan his books. I interlibrary loaned all versions of his book that he privately published, and it was fascinating. It was very technical and sometimes hard to follow, but I really. It really rang true to me, his direction of research. But yeah, and here it is since, the 30s. It's almost 100 years now.
Yes.
That this research has been going on, and a lot of people still don't know about it or aren't familiar with it, or they will instantly reject it. Oh, no.
I found a lot of people doing that when I was discussing the show topic. But we are at the top of the hour. And we'll be back right after this news break. And you know what? I know we could all use a little good news today. So here's hoping. We'll be back after this.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lori London. Attorney General William Barr says he expects to release the special counsel's report by mid-April, if not sooner. NPR's Carrie Johnson reports the document is nearly 400 pages long.
The Attorney General says he's willing to testify before the House and Senate Judiciary Committees in early May. Bill Barr says he's making progress in reviewing Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report. The AG says there could be redactions to protect grand jury material, sources and methods, and ongoing investigations. But Barr says everyone will soon be able to read most of the report on their own. He says he doesn't believe it would be in the public interest for him to summarize the report or to release it in bits and pieces. The AG says he'll make the report public after he delivers it to key members of Congress. Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump's national security advisor is blasting Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro for using foreign military personnel to stay in power. As NPR's Michelle Kellerman reports, that now includes direct support from Russia.
In his written statement, National Security Advisor John Bolton strongly cautions actors outside the hemisphere from deploying military assets to Venezuela. He calls it a direct threat to international peace and security in the region. The U.S. Special Representative on Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, won't say what the U.S. might do in response.
I would just say that we have options, and that I think it would be a mistake for the Russians to think they have a free hand here. They don't.
Russia has sent troops and equipment to Venezuela, and Abrams says the U.S. is watching. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
About 1 million protesters took to the streets of Algiers today. It's the 6th straight week of demonstrations demanding the resignation of Algerian President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. Jake Siganero in Paris tells us this has been the biggest demonstration yet.
Week by week, the crowds have gotten bigger in the capital and around the country. Bouteflika canceled upcoming presidential elections, and since then, even his closest allies say after 20 years in power, it's time for him to go. The military chief says the president is unfit to rule, but protesters suspect that it could lead to a military coup. They don't want any semblance of the current government and want to completely rebuild Algeria's political system.
That's Jake Siganero reporting. While many resent the power held by Bouteflika, they also reject the idea of army intervention in civilian political life. Today's report on consumer spending suggests the economy slowed down in the first quarter. Consumer spending accounts for more than 2/3 of the U.S. economic activity. On Wall Street, the Dow closed up more than 200. This is NPR. Legendary filmmaker Agnès Varda has died. She was 90 years old. In a career that spanned more than 60 years, she was known as the mother of the French New Wave, as NPR's Elizabeth Blair reports.
Agnès Varda was known for poetic explorations of the human condition. A drifter, a singer waiting to find out if she has cancer. At age 88, Varda and the street artist known as JR traveled the French countryside in the documentary Faces Places. On village buildings, they plastered enormous photos of the locals they met, farmers, striking dock workers. As Varda put it, people with no power.
Chaque visage a une histoire.
Every face has a story, Varda says in the film. Varda was a trained photographer, and it shows. Critic Roger Ebert said she captured the essence of her characters in their placement in space and light. Agnès Varda received an honorary Oscar for her body of work. Elizabeth Blair, NPR News.
Thousands of students in Berlin have skipped school again today to take part in a rally demanding climate change action. Swedish teen Greta Thunberg, who inspired the school strike, protests in Germany and elsewhere, is leading the rally through Berlin's government district. The weekly protests have been mostly welcomed by German politicians, though some say they shouldn't be done during school hours. One student responding with a banner stating, "I'll go to school if you cool the planet." This is NPR News.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Hello there. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am Kat Hobson, your host. Tonight I'm joined by Stephen Myers. Stephen is an advocate for the Great Pyramid's function as a water pump, and he has created the Pharaoh's Pump Foundation. You can find that website at www.thepump.org. And, this is a topic that I find fascinating because when you stop to think about the pyramid, the Great Pyramid, as a piece of infrastructure, well, all the things that don't make sense about it kind of fall into place. And it's something that I heard Stephen talk several years ago, and I kind of researched the idea, read his books, and I'm sorry to say I'm rusty on them. I've been refreshing. But the whole concept, while unusual, is not unrealistic. I mean, we do things like that. We're pretty fascinating. We have people who are intelligent that come up with methodologies to do that. I'm married to a machinist who is frankly astounded by the construction and the stone cutting that is involved in that, as well as other ancient sites. He just thinks it's astounding that people could do that without power tools. Well, if they could build a water pump, they could figure out power tools, right?
That's correct. The Industrial Revolution started with water power, if you will, in the United States. It was in the Atlantic Northeast, and they had waterfalls, so that's where they built the factories. They could power, factories with water wheels. So water and machinery go hand in hand since the Industrial Revolution. So yes, and we think that the Great Pyramid, the pumped water, was used probably to generate electricity, power machinery, and do a host of other things that we may not even know about.
Well, they didn't all just sit around and draw pictures. So,
no, they didn't.
I mean, that is fascinating. The methodologies used to communicate in that time frame are astounding to me. What's even more astounding to me are the people that can interpret them. I am so in awe of people that do that work and have done all that research, and my hat is off to them because I don't have the patience. I studied Latin and it made me cross. So we have a comment in chat, which is the Romans had water running in their homes. They just didn't know about lead poisoning. So why could the Egyptians also not have figured out how to pump water inland? I mean,
that's true.
There's other histories, other places in history that accomplished this. This is not an isolated incident.
Yes, the ancient Romans did have an extensive aqueduct system.
Yes,
and but they did use some pipes that were made of lead, and there was consequences to that. So, but yeah, there's a lot of high technology in ancient times. So even in South America, they did brain surgery that was successful. There's a lot of skulls that are evidence of that. The terrapanning, if you will, is brain surgery. And so ancient people were geniuses. They weren't knuckle draggers. And they had the same wants, needs, and desires that we have, which is that our kids eat every day and that we don't have to work 14 hours a day and other things like that. So that's what I think the Great Pyramid did. And it's some people, like that idea and feel it's compelling.
I do. I was curious when I was reading, and I know that you consider the water pump as an alternate to fossil fuel.
I do.
In what way would having a structure such as the pyramid or a water pump such as that, even on a smaller scale, what would you anticipate that doing to eliminate fossil fuel needs?
Well, it's a lot of water pumps, especially in the third world countries, are powered by gasoline engines, or if they're a little bit bigger water pumps, by diesel engines, and those are fossil fuels. But if you can use this unique water pumping system that doesn't use fossil fuels, it would replace that both of those types of fuels. I know that in the poverty-stricken areas of the third world, they can't afford expensive fuels from the east and then expensively machined water pumping systems from the west. So more people die every day from lack of water or lack of clean water than twice as many that were killed at 9/11. So every day there's two 9/11s, but they're not in New York City. They're just oftentimes people of color or just kids that die from dysentery or lack of clean water or lack of irrigation water. So that's what one of the goals of our nonprofit foundation is to reduce, that death toll by providing an additional alternative to generate electricity.
That's a beautiful thing.
I appreciate that.
What about the other cultures that had these pyramidal type structures? You had them. Well, actually, they're around the globe. They're not just Mayan and Aztec. They're in China. They're across Asia. Do you feel that this was something that was shared? And if so, there's not a historic record of people being able to travel those distances to communicate. How would those ideas have evolved in that way? And do you feel any of those others are pumps as well?
That's an excellent question. There are a lot of pyramids around the world, both ancient and modern, and they all serve some sort of a purpose. There's a pyramid in Las Vegas, a pyramid at the Louvre, South America, China, like you say, ancient and modern. And they're all built with different degrees of workmanship, different sizes. The angles of the sides are different. Some pyramids in Mexico or South America area are made out of stone rubble, if you will, or dirt. Others, like the Great Pyramid, are quite precise in their construction and made out of large stones. So they have different construction techniques, and you can't lump them all together, certainly. So I think the Great Pyramid is the only one that was built to be a machine that pumped water. Other pyramids don't have the same passages and chambers, or they're made out of dirt or that type of thing. So, some in South America have little houses on the top and that type of thing, a platform, steps. So much different.
Well, I know that there are step pyramids and stuff also, but are there no others that are known to man that have similar interiors?
No, none have similar interiors to the design of the interior of the Great Pyramid. The Grand Gallery is known for having stones that were placed together. You can't even put a razor blade between them. Right. And they have mortar that's stronger than the stone itself between the stones. If the Grand Gallery wasn't already built inside a wonder of the world, it would be a wonder of the world. And the Great Pyramid is associated with the subterranean chamber and all the other chambers and the vents. So no, it's unique in the world, and there's no other pyramid like it. And I think that it alone was built to be a water pump, and other pyramids had different purposes, built with different ways, and served different functions.
But there are others that are built to that degree of machine work and the fitting together of the stones.
Yes, the pyramid right next to the Great Pyramid that still has some of the casing stones on top of it, it has some precision stonework. But the smaller pyramid, Bukhari's pyramid, it is just a little bit more primitive. So the sequence of construction of the pyramids, even on the Giza Plateau, is under scholarly debate, and certainly who built them. So, but in terms of being a functioning water pump, I don't think any of them, other than the Great Pyramid, did that. So, but my research is not about if the other pyramids are not water pumps. My research is about the Great Pyramid being a water pump.
But it would be nice to find that technology in other places, because I know that a lot of the stonework and building structure in Peru is of similar quality.
Right.
And similar precision. So that's why I asked that.
Right. Machu Picchu and some stone walls and other thing down in that area are extremely amazing, just phenomenal in its stonework. But there's no pyramid at Machu Picchu or these walls, if you will. So it's a little different. You can't put all the pyramids, blanket them together, and say, well, this pyramid wasn't a water pump. That means none of them were water pumps. You can't really do that. And I've had a lot of people use that logical fallacy.
Really?
So, oh yeah. Let's say.
Well, I was just saying, wouldn't it be cool if some of them were?
It would be cool, but let's say there was a car wreck out in the street and 2 people got killed, and they wanted to find out what happened. Well, if the police came and said, well, what happened in this other car wreck over here, or that other car wreck out of state? Well, at this other car wreck, nobody got killed. Well, then people don't get killed in car wrecks. I've had people do that. If this other pyramid isn't a water pump, and it can't be because it's just made out of stone rubble, then pyramids aren't water pumps. Well, it's a false comparison.
Well, I think that sometimes when you're looking at something that is built to very similar specifications yet halfway across the world, you kind of have to wonder.
You do wonder.
I don't have a problem with saying I think that there might be some other pyramid structures that could have been the same thing.
That's a possibility.
And it would be a good thing. I mean, I understand that the Great...
I love that.
I know, and I understand that the Great Pyramid is your focus. But you're also very knowledgeable of pyramidal structure.
I am.
So, it's okay, right, to kind of branch that vision out a little bit and say, I wonder if there's something else that could be this as well. Maybe this was not just an isolated incident.
It could be. Certainly, we have our nonprofit foundation, and we're doing a lot of different things, if you will. Produced 2 documentaries and 2 books. But if people want to become involved and help us study other pyramids and that type of thing, we would sure appreciate any help that we can get. So
absolutely.
Yes.
So and that is www.thepump.org. And you are welcome to go there, contribute, learn. There's a video series there that will help you understand what Stephen is talking about. And that being said, we're at our first break of this hour. I can't believe it. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Y'all enjoy.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Son of a...
Hey, son.
Mother...
Son, what are you doing?
Hey, Mom. I'm getting ready to listen to Periscope Uncensored.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Son, the uncensored part of Periscope Uncensored is Jax and I getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. There's no fluff on our show.
So, no off-color commentary?
I didn't say that.
Awesome!
Son?
I just hit my head.
Oh boy, I'll go get you an ice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I'm Kat Hobson, your host, and I am joined tonight by Stephen Myers, the author of books of the lost technologies of the Great Pyramid. And I have just blanked out, Stephen.
The Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine.
Prosperity Machine. Thank you. I knew it was in there somewhere. I am so having a blast discussing this, and we were discussing right before we left, that people have given you a lot of grief, that they, if one pyramid isn't what you're saying, the Great Pyramid is, and, the Great Pyramid couldn't possibly be either. You catch a lot of flack, don't you?
I do. I do. There was a guy named Alexander Fleming, and he noticed this mold, and he said this mold, bread mold, is going to make people well, sick people well, and he got a lot of flack for it, and he invented penicillin, and it was not accepted by the medical community for quite a while. They said, "Oh, we don't need penicillin; we're fine without it," or "It's too expensive," or "It doesn't work." And then finally, after almost a generation, or quite a while anyway, years and years and years, he got penicillin accepted by the medical community. He was a botanist, so how could he tell doctors, what to do? So yeah. Every revolutionary idea gets a lot of flack. And another guy, a weatherman, name of Wagner, talked about continental drift. And geologists said, "Oh, no, we can't have continental drift. No, it doesn't work. We can't have it." But then about 40 years later, they came up with plate tectonics. which was exactly the same thing.
Absolutely.
So if you don't have a lot of opposition, then you're not doing something right. But
a lot of
the
people fold under that, Stephen.
I appreciate that, but I always encounter other types of people that aren't experts, the people that work in shipyards, the people that are familiar with water locks like you are, people that don't just believe that the aliens used a magic wand, people that actually look into the direction of my research and they say, wow, this is compelling because the Great Pyramid was actually built. And this description of how it was built is, people say, wow, that makes sense. So that's the type of thing that keeps me going.
I know that so many different entertainment venues say that there's no way that humans could have built the pyramids, the Great Pyramid especially. And yet, I heard in a lecture a Cairo-born Egyptologist who is in this entertainment venue on occasion say, we have this papyrus that says the Great Pyramid, which we thought was built in 50 years, was built in 27.
Yes.
That means humans built it. There is a foreman on the job who had a journal that wrote this in his journal. So that would be, to me, conclusive evidence that humans did build the pyramid.
I do think that humans built the Great Pyramid. They may have had some technology from aliens, but I do think humans built it. I really do. And they built it with a purpose in mind, that was bigger than the cost of building it. So yes, humans built the Great Pyramid.
There's a lot of things that we have built that the people who started it knew they would never see the end of it. The Panama Canal is one of those. We mentioned that earlier.
The Panama Canal, a few other things. The highway system, a lot of people worked on that, but didn't see it certainly completed, and other things. So, yeah.
Things that are bigger than them.
Yes.
Or more important to them than themselves. That they know that they're contributing to the future. That they're going to make the world a better place for their offspring. And, I don't think that, I don't necessarily think that the alignment of these pyramids is coincidental. Especially if you were to consider that there was interstellar guidance on the idea. People showed up. They said, what do you think about this? This is what we would suggest maybe trying to do. This is what your result will be. And it will help your community. And then, they left or whatever. And I think that perhaps the alignment would be a tribute. And there's all kinds of different reasons for that alignment. But I just find it fascinating that people even question that this may be what you think it is, what you're convinced it is. It's a neat concept, but it's not unheard of in all of the great societies.
That's true. Yeah. For whatever reason, the Great Pyramid was built. It was assembled. And part of my research is the assembly process.
Yes.
I know that people that are into the correlations and alignments don't really focus on how the stones were moved from one place to another, but the people do really respond in a positive manner. A lot of people, not everyone.
Well, that's what makes it interesting, because you give all of this information on the actual building of the pyramid.
Right.
The
That's almost
how-tos.
the mystery of the ages. A lot of people, when you ask them, well, how was the Great Pyramid built? They'll tell you about pharaohs or about gods or about religion or language or hieroglyphs. But what I do is focus on a technical aspects of a construction project, and to me, that's interesting. Other people have different interests, like what type of hat the pharaoh wore, or clothing, or battles. So everyone has a different focus, and the focus I have is on actually quite a technical level.
You think? said she who worked her way through the books. But I will say that if somebody has questions, there's a video series on thepump.org that will get you there. You can look at that, read the books, and you'll understand where Stephen's coming from with this. It's just not an impossibility. But what is the hardest thing in your experience to get people to accept relevant to this?
Well, the hardest thing is for somebody who already thinks they're committed to an idea that they think is correct, to question that idea and then replace it with a better idea. That's the hardest thing for humans to do. And people already think, oh, well, they just built a big ramp and they had big back muscles. Well, if that's what you think, a lot of people can't transcend what they already think is true, even when given different types of evidence. So that's the hardest thing. And all I ask people to do is to at least become familiar with the direction of research and then contemplate the information in my books. Both of my books are available as Kindle ebooks, so people could read them right away.
Well, I would strongly suggest anyone read those, both of them. The Lost Technologies first, but
yes,
it's really neat because I don't know how open are Egyptologists. Have you spoken with people like in the Department of Antiquities in Egypt, or anyone who was an Egyptologist who was open to this?
Well, certainly my information is available for peer review because it's a book they can read if they read books. But my experience, I've been doing this for quite a while, like 25 years. There's essentially a wall of silence. They won't even say that my research is incorrect. They won't even say it. So that's where they're at. But most Egyptologists, the largest stone they've ever moved is the one in their kidney.
Oh, that was good.
You know the difference between an Egyptologist and a grave robber?
I do not.
One has a college education and the other one don't. So Egyptology, its genesis started from people robbing graves. And
well, that's a fact, because they were seeking the treasures that were buried with the pharaohs and on down through the hierarchy.
Right. They would steal stuff out of people's tombs and then sell it to museums so interested patrons can make their donations and they can sell ticket sales. That's the what Egyptology is from, if you will. So, but now the whole process is much more genteel. They pay a fee, and they're sponsored by a university or a museum to do their dig, but they still take stuff out of people's graves, put it in museums for people to buy tickets. So, and Egyptology does not engage in the scientific method. They never made any type of precision stone cutting using hand tools. The reason being is their story is incorrect. It can't be done. And they don't move heavy payloads or anything like that. So they're just storytellers. And in fact, Egyptology is a science that is now in crisis because they tell these stories generation after generation about the big ramp and all of that, but no demonstrations are forthcoming. Egyptology is the only science that abhors the scientific method. So it's a science that is either going to change or go away. Sciences do come and go.
Well, that's true. I'm a paranormal investigator, and parapsychology is a real thing that has only fairly recently been recognized. So I would agree with that. But as far as Egyptology, I want to touch on that again, if you don't mind. We've got a couple of minutes before our break. But
sure.
When you say that they don't follow scientific method, there is a method to archaeology. There are rules that you have to follow. There are methods in place to do this accurately without damage to the artifacts. I, for one, do not mind that people are doing this and putting stuff in museums that I can go and, pay my $10 and go through.
Oh, certainly. I know that.
It's not a science as much. Egyptology is a profession and a field of study as opposed to a science. The archaeology and the carbon dating and such as that are where the science side comes in, right? What other science do you feel should be applied?
Yeah, there's certainly scientific procedures need to be followed, but Egyptologists say people drug a 70-ton payload up a ramp without handling scars. That's a hypothesis.
That is a hypothesis.
So what Egyptologists needs to do if they want to be involved in the scientific method is to provide a demonstration that shows how that's done. But what Egyptology does is they drag around stones that don't weigh 70 tons, but weigh 1.5 tons. Then they drag them several feet and they say that's how it's done. That is just like me saying I can go out into the driveway and pick up a full-size car just by myself. Just grab it and pick it up. Okay? I will demonstrate it by using a Hot Wheels. I'll pick up a Hot Wheels. Do you
well
see
played.
What I'm saying?
Yes.
It's just farcical. They also, Egyptology presents a hypothesis that precision stone cutting was accomplished using hand tools. Yet, in the 200 years of the existence of Egyptology, they have never made a precision cut stone like a casing stone. They're cut really precise.
Yes, they are.
So they tell this story, but then there's no demonstration. It's like, let's say I was a cow jump over the moon-ologist and told you all about cows jumping over the moon, and how they land without breaking their legs and everything. And then somebody comes up and says, hey, can you demonstrate cows jumping over the moon? Well, it's in literature and it's all written down. You can read stories about it from ancient times. Yeah, but can you demonstrate it? Like use the scientific method? And then I would say, get out of here, kid. You're bothering me. And Egyptology is just that farcical in regards to talking about the pyramids. Egyptology is the mindset of robbing graves. So if you come up with you come across a pyramid, that was a tomb for a pharaoh or whatever. And the reason why there's no treasure in the pyramids, ancient times people stole all the stuff out before we could steal it in modern times. I mean, that's Egyptology. The richest science in the world, yet they can't demonstrate what they say working people did all day long.
Interesting.
It is. And people don't put up with it anymore. I don't know anyone that's past the 8th grade that believes Doryite pounders can produce precision stone cutting. Yet they teach it in the 21st century in universities.
Shame
I said, on those universities.
Well, shame on those universities for a lot of things they're teaching, or not.
I agree.
That, those who don't know history are condemned to repeat it. But as I said, I'm married to a machinist. I agree with you that if those stones were ostensibly cut in that method, show me. Do one.
Right. I could go up to your husband and say, on a lathe, you can't make a round cylinder. And he wouldn't tell me a story.
No.
Or tell me about the book he's written. He would run over to his lathe and make one and make me look like an idiot.
Make it beautifully because he's a great machinist. Just putting it out there.
But these alternative researchers around the globe have a common enemy, if you will, Egyptology. We all say it can't be done using hand tools, precision stone cutting. All Egyptology has to do is engage in the scientific method and shut us all up. But they won't do it because it literally can't be done. They're wrong. It cannot be done. So it's just an interesting paradox that we're in the 21st century.
What do you make? We've only got a minute. I'm going to have to ask you this when we come back because this is more than a minute. So,
okay.
But remind me, because this is relevant to the H blocks that we were talking about in Peru and things of that nature. But with that being said, guys, this is going to be our final break. We're going to come back for our final segment with Stephen Myers, and we are going to get some answers, hopefully, and just continue the conversation. I hope y'all are enjoying this as much as I am. This is a fascinating topic to me, the Great Pyramid as a water pump. But we'll be back. Y'all enjoy, and we will see you in just a moment.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. The best in paranormal talk radio.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back. This is the final segment of Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. My guest tonight is Stephen Myers. I cannot believe this is the final segment, Stephen. I have enjoyed this.
Oh, so have I.
But we were talking during the break, and I was telling you that specifically with those H blocks in Peru, my husband is amazed by those because he said that would be impossible for anyone to do with hand tools. They almost had to be CNC produced. And I find that interesting because he never has an opinion about this stuff. Right? I mean, he's amazed by it, but he never just flat out says that couldn't be done. And you and I were talking about, physical science is real. There are some things that you simply cannot do. There are others that you can show repetition and demonstrate your principle. That's what you're talking about, right?
I am. I'm familiar with the H blocks down in Peru. They're fairly large, about 3 feet high, and they have some unique cuts on them, some inside corner cuts, if you will, that as your husband, a machinist, acknowledges the reality that it can't be done by hand. And it has never been demonstrated to be done by hand. So traditional historians say, oh, yeah, these primitive people that lived in huts used rocks and pounded them together and made these precision stone cuts, but their stories aren't accompanied with demonstrations. So it is another remarkable high technology from ancient times that it hasn't been demonstrated, and in fact, it's a type of mystery.
Well, some of the ideas floated are, they melted this and that's how they got it so tight. And, well, then the lines wouldn't be straight.
That's correct.
I sit there and I listen to these theories and I greatly respect the people who are putting them forward, but they're fallacies.
They are. I've heard that there was a plant, but they don't know what plant it is, that if you rub it on stone, it makes the stone soft. And then, but, it's just, I'd rather say it's not known than to come up with a story that can't be demonstrated. So
unknown is okay.
Those blocks are amazing. It's just amazing, mind-boggling.
It is. But, it's okay to say, I don't know.
It is okay. It's better to say, I don't know, than to know something that's incorrect. So yeah, that's, what was his name? Mark Twain said that.
Mark Twain.
It's better to be ignorant of something than to know something that just isn't so. And it's hard to overcome that. If you know something that isn't correct, it's really hard to overcome that. Computers can do that. They just write over a file, or you can delete a file, but you can't delete something in your mind as easily. It's very difficult to overcome.
It is. And, computers will only produce a product if their code is right.
That's correct.
They won't just randomly create things. And they will reject something if it's not.
What I like is the idea of spare parts. You can go to get a spare part for your car, for your computer, and everything else. And the spare part looks just like the part that you're replacing,
exactly.
in your engine. So go down to the Egyptologist, and I wish I could do this. I have $17 million, and I want to purchase a spare part. I want to purchase a casing stone. Can you make me one? And wave the check in front of their face and see if they could do it. But they couldn't do it.
You would have to specify, could you make me that in the same manner as the original?
Right. Make me that in the way you say it was made. Oh, well, we can't do that. but we say working people could do it all day long. So it's strange.
Well,
It really
I just don't know what to make of this, because I know Egyptologists. I know people who are into the Ministry of Antiquities level interest in artifacts and such as that. And I don't really know an Egyptologist in real life who says that men, made by hand those case stones.
Oh yeah.
So I know that's what is expounded, but I've never had someone who actually does that tell me that.
It says it, yes. I have a different experience. All of their books, when they talk about how pyramids were made, show illustrations, not real demonstrations, of people pounding on stones to produce precision stonework. So it's certainly a subject probably that I'm more into than you, that aspect. But that is their story. That's the company line of Egyptology, is that it was done using hand tools all day long by working people, but experts like Egyptologists can't do it.
Well, I'm very disappointed that nobody has ever brought forth a hand-wrought case stone. Maybe I can find someone to talk to me to explain why that's so.
Ask one. Yeah.
I will.
Ask them, how come a 70-ton payload hasn't been moved on or off of a barge? That's another thing they've never done. All Egyptologists agree barges were used to move the 70-ton payloads because the quarry is 400 miles upstream, if you will.
Right.
So that they say that was done, but they can't do that, certainly. Also, Egyptologists can't move a stone, a full-size stone, around the corner of a spiral ramp because it can't be done, not effectively. Also, Egyptologists say, well, they had to move a stone every 2 minutes. So that means let's have Egyptology move 2 stones in 4 minutes. Well, they can't do it, but working people could do it all day long, year after year. But Egyptology has never done any of these pivotal aspects using full-size stones to ever demonstrate how the Great Pyramid was built.
I'm going to say that lends credence to your take on this experience.
I do. I have a take, and that is, what don't believe Egyptologists when they talk about how the Great Pyramid was built, because a lot of the things that they say are absolutely incorrect. It's like 17th century information that they're just retelling here in the 21st century.
And it's really something, because now we have the methodologies in place to be able to do a great part of that.
Yeah. All you need is a Abrams A1 tank. They weigh 70 tons, or a locomotive, and take the wheels off of those things and drag it up a dirt ramp, and then set it in place within 1 centimeter of where it needs to go. And all these people, like myself, will go back into the woodwork. Get a bunch of Egyptologists with strong backs and pull a 70-ton locomotive up a ramp and set it in place, up a dirt ramp. But
even on the logs, that weight would disintegrate the logs.
Oh, of course it would. Everybody knows that, except for experts. They're the last ones.
It's just amazing to me. Well, you know what? I like that you have gone to all of the work, all of the research, and put so much time and treasure into working to get your information right, and working to get the knowledge out that this is the probability And I also greatly admire that your goal is not self-promotion, but that your goal is to make sure that people have clean energy and are able to have better lives, to be able to get water distributed in a safe and healthy manner. You know, the reasons that you are doing what you're doing, as frustrated as you get with the powers that be that espouse other theories, your goal, almost to the point of tunnel vision, is to help other people. And I choked you up. I got you all choked up.
Yeah, you did. You choked me up there.
But, you know, it's, and I am sorry that you're sick. Just so people know, he is sick. And he has done this show because it mattered that much to him. So, you know, I am so touched and thrilled that you took the time and went through 2 hours worth of talking with the cough that you have. It's going everywhere. It's across the country. Everyone I'm talking to either has it or knows people that do. But I love the reason that you do your work. And
right.
I think the books are fantastic. And as he said, they're on Kindle. And you actually have one, if I'm not mistaken, that is a Kindle Unlimited book.
Yeah, they both are. So
they
if you
both
got
are?
Kindle Unlimited, you can get them for free. That's why I'm broke.
Well, I don't think that will last for long. I think that this is something that people are just, you know, we're getting you out there. We're getting the information out there, working with you to do that. And I think it matters that much, Stephen. And I want to thank you for being somebody that's going to battle over this stuff, trying to get the technology replicated.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully, we will get some substantial funding, or maybe even someone like Bill Gates or the guy that owns Amazon.com will consider it like what they call a Hail Mary thing to fund. You know, something that they might consider to be a big return, but possibly far-fetched. But if we can get something like that, some type of funding, then we can develop this research and the technology to build these water pumps in the here and now.
Well, you know what? There's nothing ventured, nothing gained. And this is something that will alter the lives of so many people. As I said, you know, North Africa, it's tough enough. Central and South Africa, I have friends that go over there and dig wells every break they get to go and build wells for communities in Africa because there's no clean water for miles. Villages, I mean, entire villages don't have any. And so I think that's a pretty amazing thing.
No electricity, no infrastructure.
No infrastructure, nothing to help them.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do. I think our goals, with our foundation are the same as the goals of the people that actually built the Great Pyramid. So
I do
hopefully the things, we're making progress every day in our research facility, and I hope that we can get it going in the near future.
I hope so too. Thank you for being with me tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And for those listening, again, Stephen's website is www.thepump.com. Check it out. .org. So it's perfect. It's got the videos. It's got the book information. It has the background information on why they're doing it. And the organization, in case Bill Gates is listening or any other one person that wants to be tossing some money to help the world, is the Pharaoh's Pump Foundation. So,
yes.
Thank you, Stephen.
Oh, thank you so much for this wonderful experience.
You're welcome. And guys, we will be heading out. Y'all have a great week. Tomorrow night will be the Paranormal Pride with Denise Pridemore. Tuesday, we're dark. Wednesday is Paranormal Experienced with myself. Thursday will be Periscope Uncensored with Clarissa Vasquez and the infamous Jax. Friday is busy. That will be Paraversal Universe. We'll have the Paralegend Report segment with them. That will be at 4 o'clock Central Time, 5 o'clock Eastern. And that will be followed by a live Ghost Talk Radio. And then Seraphine Hurley with Tripping the Void. And then me back with Fate next week. And so you know the drill. Same cat time, same cat channel. Thank you. Thank you again, Stephen.
Oh, thank you.
Good night.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.